So we are here with Elana Bussell Shelef, and she is joining us to kind of talk about her history and role in the 4th Street Bridge Park and really how it affects her family going back through generations. This is really an interesting story and one that really motivated all of us who were involved with the creation of the park. So, Lana, if you don't mind, could you tell us, do you remember how you first became aware that there was a plan to build a park at this site?
Honestly, I think I stumbled upon it in like a GoFundMe page, and I thought, "Oh, this looks so interesting," and I couldn't wait to tell my dad about it. So I did take as much information as I could, and I shared it with him. And I decided I wanted to honor him because his birthday was coming up, and I thought, what better way to do that than to make a donation towards the park to help it get started and hopefully, in my dad's lifetime, he would be able to see it come to fruition.
Wow, no, and that's great. We actually use a service called Patronicity, which is very much, yeah, like I said, like a GoFundMe sort of program that we were very new to. And your response to that showed us, well, actually, it's reaching people and it works pretty well. So I recommend it to those who are, in this sort of crowdfunding, especially for public service sort of
I
thing.
don't know how I found it. It could have been off Facebook or something. I'm not on those sites very often, so it was just meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it brought it together. And you kind of alluded to it, but could you give a little more background, sort of, to the motivations? With your family connection, the story of the 1932 Fort Hunger March. What compelled you and your family to want to support the park? And you can certainly talk about the name connection there.
Okay. My father's name is Joel, and he was named after his uncle, Joe Bussell. Joe was a 16-year-old, 16 and a half year old kid, really. But and in those days, I guess now we would call them social justice warriors. So I don't think they realized, what they were getting themselves into. It was a big protest. It was just looking for, reasonable work conditions and um, unfortunately, he got caught in a crossfire and he was killed. And if you look back into the library at Wayne State, the archives, they have a lot of pictures of the funeral, basically, and just a few pictures of the incident. So it was a real blow to my family, even though my grandfather survived. It was a big hole in their hearts, and my dad always felt connected because he was named after Joe. And so my dad was always a big community service advocate, and so I thought this would really fall into his line of thinking about making Detroit the community that it once was and repairing the world, so to speak. So I felt I would just, give as much as I could at the time, and hopefully others would as well. So I started trying to spread the word among my social network contacts, but I don't know if anybody did contribute. But I felt like it was a step in the right direction.
Abs- No, absolutely. And I'll tell you, whether it was your spreading or the many others who helped support that campaign raised necessary dollars to match a grant that we had, and ultimately the park ended up raising just about $1 million to be completed. So your first contribution got the ball rolling, which is exactly what we expected to have happen. So we appreciate you sticking through it. But it really was the personal story and so many others who gave in that vein of the sort of personal story and connection to the march. You talked about it, and it reminds me of when I first met you and your family actually face to face at the Michigan Labor History Society has an annual meeting, and it happened to be at the UAW Local 600 that year. And that local really has been the flag bearer for the marchers, sort of honoring their memory, and the hall, or even arranged to have the grave markers placed at Woodmere Cemetery. So that local really has been the supporters. So that night, your dad gave us a speech very similar to what you just said, in that ilk of he spoke to that audience about how we all needed to look at ways that we could work together and sort of look towards the future. That Detroit was, and the community was this great place, and it certainly could be again. He was really encouraged about what he was seeing in a general sense of all the redevelopment that was going on, and he felt like the park would sort of add to that. So, how do you think the park addresses your dad's vision for our future?
Oh my goodness, it's such a bridge, I believe. cleaning up a Browns field and being so close to the Rouge and the river and being available for the neighborhood. It's just beautiful. When I saw the plans online, the detail that went into it, the thought that went into it, I just knew it was going to be a beautiful park. Although I had no idea, really, in reality, how much I would be moved by the park when I was there.
No, no. We were so proud to finally bring it to fruition, and you were very patient as we went through that process, because I think we all learned as we were building it that it's not an overnight thing, and to have built a park on a state of Michigan property that's adjacent to an international waterway and also has the city of Detroit behind it as its maintenance plan with a little bit of Wayne County sprinkled in there. It was no small undertaking. So we appreciate your patience. And from that first donation to the day we cut the ribbon. So the ribbon was cut in October of 2020. Even in the midst of pandemic, we were proud to be there. So what did it mean to sort of come full circle, to have you there right front and center to cut the ribbon at the park?
It was amazing to me how many groups did come together to work on the project. And working for the Engineering Society of Detroit, I recognized the names of the constructors, and of course I connected with Ford people there. So it was really wonderful. I really felt that it did actually come full circle. It was an acknowledgement of the loss of the 5 lives that happened on that horrific day. But I feel like we're on our way, and that did a lot for the healing, at least for my family. It did a lot.
Yeah, no. And that was certainly the intention. I always said along the way that there were a lot of hows, there were a lot of fundraising and great events that we held, and outreach, and even doing things like the Patient Institute Drive. That was the how the park got created, and the plans that were done. But the why really resided in stories like yours, and the community members around there as to why we worked so hard for so many years to make it a reality. So I'm glad that it came through. We appreciate it. I know it's hard to say, but as you were there, and sort of taking a look all around, and we saw sculpture, we saw water feature, and we saw, historic signs and interpretive signage there. Do you have a favorite features? Anything that stood out to you as really like, wow, that this really pulled it all together?
Honestly, I loved it all. But of course, the sculpture and the commemorative plaques really moved me. But I love the splash pad that made it so attractive to families and young kids. And the interpretive signs were really interesting. And I love that they used native plantings. And there was so much thought put into it. It was way more than I expected it to be. So thank you so much for championing this cause. I know it was a lot of work, but I think everybody is so grateful for it.
Well, now that we sort of got to the end of our beginning, in that we worked, for years to build the park, but that is just now the beginning of the story. And now it's all to all of us as stewards to help support and protect the park, and have it there for generations to come. Because, like you said, it is a positive, lasting monument to the hunger marchers. It is a connection to our environmental story, and so how all those pieces together, and a nod to industry and community and how they have to work together. So we really do feel like it, tells a lot of stories in this one place. So what can you say now that you've done the heavy lifting at the beginning to support the park and champion it? It's become a reality. But what do you say to those who now will be stewards of the park and users of the park for years to come?
I just think it's just a wonderful place, and it's just given a jump start, I hope, for the community, because they were integrally a part of it as well. I couldn't believe how many people were involved and had their input, and then the future plans for, potential kayaking down the road is just so exciting to me. And I know that it's just a little corner of our world, but a little corner can mean so much and can bring so much peace and healing.
We really appreciate you. Appreciate you taking the time today to talk to us about your thoughts on the park. Like I said, it really was the why, the motivation, why we wanted to do it, and in honor of your dad, who passed away just a few weeks after. So it sounds like he did indeed get a chance to see little bits of it. You said you were able to share with him the reality of the park. So in honor of your dad, your mom, your family's legacy, we hope that it did you proud, and we appreciate you taking the time and also being a part of this throughout the journey.